Hello everyone and welcome back to this new part of the project Our World. Today we are gonna use this scene inspired by The Walking Dead, where you've got zombies and a character. Remember, I did it in a previous video, and to improve it I'm gonna use what we talked about, which is the sculpt. So I'm just creating a new scene here. Okay. So if you want to sculpt something, your first thought would be to create a plane. Okay, just like that. And then change to the sculpt mode, and then you will want to start sculpting your plane. But almost nothing happened. And this is because it is modifying geometry. And your plane here only got 4 vertices. So it only moves those 4 vertices. That's why we couldn't see anything. If you subdivide your plane, then you can see that I can modify the mesh, which is much more complex, and we've got some kind of result. So that's the third thing, and that's why sculpting wasn't that accessible before, because we needed a powerful machine to display and modify smoothly hundreds of thousands of polygons, or sometimes even more. Okay. So now I'm gonna go through the 3 main types of sculpting methods. Okay, the first one is called multi-res, and it's based off a modifier, which is also called multi-res. You start with a simple shape, and then you add a subdivision level, which will make a more complex shape that you will then sculpt, and you keep on going like that towards a more detailed shape to get more details on your model. And the great thing with this is that you can also go backwards. You can move back to a previous subdivision level and modify the object. Okay, so here I'm adding the multi-res modifier. You can see the options here on the right, and for the moment you got a subdivision level at 0. To add 1, you can use this button here, subdivide. Now I'm trying to modify to sculpt my cube, and it's the same thing like we had before with the plane. The modifier is still accessible in sculpt mode, and if I hit subdivide here, you can see that it has added a level of subdivision. Just wanted to smooth my shape. So now I can start sculpting away my shape. This is just an example. That's why it's not gonna be a very complicated and nice sculpt. And then, little by little, you can add more subdivision levels, and of course, the sculpt will look much better. Okay? So, what I'm gonna do now is adding another subdivision level to show you some kind of more detailed sculpt. Okay, this way, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a kind of bump on my shape now. What I can do is going back some levels before. You can see now the shape is simpler, and if I modify it at this stage, okay, the shape is modified as if I was at this subdivision level, and if I increase it, you can see that my detail I did earlier is still here, but it's based now on the new shape I've given it at the lowest subdivision level. So that is very good if you know almost what you want to do, okay, because you have to think about the earlier shapes before you add details. And I went out of sculpt mode and I had back my cube. This is because the setting for the viewport level was still at 0. Okay, this is to keep the viewports light when you're not working on your object. Okay, so the second type of sculpting, I wrote Dino Topo, but the real word is Dyne Topo for dynamic topology. Okay, and this allows you to add details on your mesh, but let's say in real time, only where you are sculpting. So this kind of plane can still have these 4 vertices, but if I sculpt in the middle something, you will have details only in this area. Okay? So now I'm gonna show you, okay, how it is looking like. If I start again with the cube, and I activate here Dynotopo, okay, I will have a message that just says this is a destructive process because it will add geometry on the fly. Now if I start to sculpt my cube, you can see I can modify it easier than previously, but where we will see the real difference is here. If I activate the wireframe view of my object, you can see it's not a cube anymore, it already has added details. And now if I sculpt, you can see it's much clearer, it is really adding details to my cube as I sculpt. Okay? And you can see still here, this face I haven't sculpted, I haven't touched, so it's still simpler. I'm gonna use another cube now, just to show you. Okay, if I sculpt without the Dynotopo, this is what we get. Okay, it doesn't really work. And if I activate it, it is adding details. And I can do something like that. Okay, it has added enough details for me to sculpt this kind of protruding thing. And here, okay, you get a list of how the details are created, but the most important thing is the parameter at the top. Okay, now relative, it's relative to the view. If I zoom out, it will add less detail than if I zoom in on the object. Okay, and now I'm just gonna try to do something else, and you can see with a small amount of detail it's harder to get something because there is not enough polygon to pull it all the way. But if I decrease this value, meaning it will create more details on my mesh, you can see I can pull something like that and it's going alright. Okay, so Dynotopo, this method is used when you don't really have an idea of what you want to do, but you want to keep the freedom of a light model and still the possibility to create something as you like and as you go. Okay, so the last one is called the remesh. Okay, it takes a simple object and it's more of a manual process. You will have yourself to subdivide your model, to remesh it into a more complex object, and then you will sculpt it and repeat this process, this manual process, every time you need to add a layer of complexity to your model. Okay, it's very different from Dynotopo because it's adding details everywhere on your model, even if that's like a flat surface that you haven't touched. Okay, so again I'm starting with the cube, and this again you can't sculpt right now. It's better to start with the subdivided model, so I'm gonna use a subdivision modifier and then apply it. Okay, you have to start with a little bit of details at the beginning. Now I can sculpt, okay, something. And what I'm gonna do here is to start with a simple shape. Okay, just like that. I'm activating the symmetry options, but I'm gonna go over it a bit later. Okay, and now that my shape is done, I could either use this set of parameters from the remesh menu, or what I prefer is to use the shortcut Shift and the key on my keyboard R. Okay, R like remesh, and then it will display this grid. Then you can move your cursor to the left or the right to adjust the level of details that you want. And once it is selected, then you can press Ctrl plus R on your keyboard, and this will apply the remesh. Okay, So now my model is a bit more detailed. I can start to sculpt it and then use again Shift R so that I have my grid. You can see it's starting with the same level I stopped last time, 0.078, so that I know I'm going towards more details if I move my cursor to the right. And then I will add more details and repeating the same process until I'm satisfied. You can see that when you apply the remesher, your mesh, because it's using different polygons, will look different. So you might have to smooth a bit some element of it. Okay. But now, as you can see, if I display the wireframe on the model, it's detailed everywhere, even at the back of this kind of heads where there is no sculpt. Now I'm using the remesher tools with even a smaller subdivision, okay, so that I can add finer details on my model, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the remesh way is gonna be the one we're gonna use for the rest of the lessons. Okay, it's a more versatile, and it also need a bit of discipline from the one who sculpts, because if you subdivide your mesh too much at the beginning, of course, be very careful. You need to be sure your computer can handle it. Okay, so now let's talk about the tools of the sculpt mode. I have like a sphere which is subdivided, okay, and first, when you switch to sculpt mode, you will have your tools available on the left. You can make this panel larger on the left so that you will display 2 rows of tools. This might be easier because there is a lot of them. And if you make it even larger, you will have the list of tools and also their names, which can be handy at the beginning if you don't know them. So I'm gonna leave it like that so that you can see most of the tools. And you can see now I have a cursor, which orientation is based off the surface of my model, the normals of the model. Okay? Now you've got here the option of the radius, which will change the size of the brush, and you can use the shortcut F on your keyboard to change it. Okay? Then you've got the strength of it, and you can use Shift F to modify it. You can see how smooth or hard the brush looks like here. And then those options, I'm not gonna go through them right now. You also have the symmetry options that will duplicate what you do on the side to the other side, depending on the axis you've chosen. You can see now there's a point on the opposite side of my brush, and if I sculpt something on the x-axis, it will be sculpting on the other side. I can activate them all, and of course do some kind of crazy things like that. Now let's turn them all off, and I'm gonna go through some of the brushes. Okay, now you've got the default brush that just raise the matter like that, and if you hold Control on your keyboard when you use the brush, it will create a hole. I'm just gonna smooth my model and go back to sculpt mode. Now the other tools, I invite you to just go and try them all on the sphere yourself so that you can see what they do. Most of them will have a different shape and accumulate the matter in a different way. An interesting one to use is the smooth brush that will smooth your surface if you use it like that, but if you use another brush, you can hold down Shift and it will activate the smooth brush. Okay? Then you've got other brushes like that. Okay, the multiplane scrap that will just try to detect 2 planes and make the place in the middle thinner. But also a brush that we'll use a lot, which is the grab brush, which grab your object, like that part of the object within your brush influence. This one will have more of an elastic feeling to it. This one will just allow you to do some kind of weird thing like that. But don't overdo it, because otherwise you will end up with a mesh like that, which is not recommended, okay? So proceed with caution. Then you get something like the pose tool, okay, which allows you to pose your model. Like if you are to do a character, let's imagine this is a hand or limb, okay? The line indicates the size of bone that would be inside your limb, and then if you click, you see that you can modify the orientation of the area which is inside the influence of your brush. Imagine this was a hand or an arm, and you could modify it like that, okay? Then there was the simplify tool, which works only with time topo, so I'm not gonna show it to you now. This tool here is the cloth tool, and it will create a cloth simulation on your object as if it was some kind of drapery, okay? Usually lower the strength of it to have some result that looks nicer, okay? And then the mask option allows you to draw a mask on your object, okay? Like that will appear darker. And what you can do here is that everything which is within a mask can be modified by any sculpt brush. So I'm trying to sculpt around it, but you can see it's not sculpting the inside of the mask. And if you use the A key on your keyboard, you've got this kind of radial menu that offers a lot of options for your mask. Okay, so you can create something like that. I'm just creating some dots. I'm inverting my mask so that only those dots can be manipulated. And then I'm just creating some blobs like that. And you will never go outside of the mask. Okay, you can also do something different for like ornament stuff. Okay, I'm creating just a quick mask like that, inverting it again. And what I'm doing now is creating holes where it is not masked. Okay, so you can create some kind of ornament on some object. This way you can imagine it is possible. Next, the option I wanted to talk about is what is called face set. You can draw with this brush and it will create an area based on geometry. That's why you can see the borders are a bit like stairs. Okay, and every time you use a brush on some other area, you will use another random color. This allows you to create different areas. Okay, if you hold down Control starting from an area, you will expand its color to what is around it. Know that the gray area is also considered as a face set, so you can expand the gray onto the color area, and then if you hold down Shift, it will smooth the outside of the face sets, okay, as you can see me doing here. Now, what this allows you to do is, unlike the mask, which is just an on and off thing, these areas you can create to work on separate parts of your model. If you hit the H key on your keyboard, it will make all the other faces disappear. If you press H again, everything reappears. Okay, so now I'm masking just this area, and I'm just gonna sculpt over it, and you can see, as a mask, it's not gonna go outside of this face set, okay? But then, as I said earlier, unlike the mask, you can have as many face sets as you want, okay? You can also mask something, and then use the W key for this radial menu, and choose face set from mask, okay? Now, you have in the overlay section options for the mask to display them and also to modify their opacity, just in case you wanted to modify that. So now I've already showed you I can hide and unhide my mesh using this, but then you can have here in the options something to limit what you do within a face set, meaning that if you start sculpting on one color, you can see it's limiting the sculpts on the face sets while you started. It's not going over it. Another option I want to talk about is creating using Ctrl and W an area based on the mesh. Okay, so you can create things like that using this tool. And then I'm gonna try to smooth the outside of it, and you can see it's just going all over the place. Sometimes this happens, and I'm gonna show you a bit later how you would fix that. Okay. Next are facet options. I'm not gonna use this. And what is beside either. You've got the paint option just below. I'm gonna show that to you later on. And then you've got all the box selections, which are for to create a mask based on a box, to hide part of your object. That can be handy sometimes. Use the Alt-H key to unhide the geometry. And then you've got, of course, a box face set, which will create a face set based on the box selection. This box trim, be careful when you use it, because depending on the size of your model, it can be a very intense process. Okay, and this will just cut your model and create a face set where it is cut. The next one is called line projects, and this does not cut your mesh, but flatten everything which is here below the line to create something flat. Then you've got those filter, the mesh filter, the cloth filter, and the color filter. It works great with a face set. Okay, and here at top you've got a lot of options. Okay, and you can constrain it to the face set using this option I already shown you. And if you use that, moving your cursor from left to right, it will do what you selected. I have here another option that is called random. It will just randomly push your vertices somewhere, and now I've just relaxed that, meaning I smooth all the options. Another one is relax face set, and this will smooth the outside of your face set. Okay, that's the way you would fix the problem I had earlier with these parts. This cloth filter is great. You can choose an option and then again click on your facet and move your cursor from left to right. You can see it's modifying my mesh, but based off a cloth simulation. So this is moving like as if it was a cloth. Okay, you can really see it here, and I will insist like that. Okay, and you can do and create a very interesting shape. If you want a part of your model to look like a cloth, of course, then you've got the pinch option here, which is trying to gather a piece of your cloth. And the next one is based off colors. So I'm just gonna show you the colors option. You can choose here your color, and of course this allows you to paint on top of your mesh. It's not like painting on the texture, it's really painting the vertices of your mesh and giving them a color that allows you to paint on a very complex mesh, but without having to UV unwrap your model. And of course, the color filter will allow you to modify the colors of your painted mesh. And if I use a face set with this option, it will also constrain the modification on just the area of the face set. Okay, as you can see here, if I choose face set from visible, it will just remove all my face sets, and you can see here that color has changed just in the area where the face set was. Then you've got a mask by color, which can be useful. You can mask a color like that. And then you've got the same thing as before. You can modify the interior, then maybe invert the mask, and then sculpt inside as well if you want to. Okay? Next, the options here looks like normal options, like move, rotate, scale. If I use a facet here for that, you can see that if I move now my facet, it has moved it without moving the rest of the model. I can use it as well on a masked area like this, but be careful, the G shortcut doesn't work because it will activate the grab tool here. So you have to use the gizmo to modify your object at this point. but except for a few things, you wouldn't really use those tools. Okay? So, I think we are done with the sculpt tools. Okay? And if I were to remesh this object, okay, it is remeshed now. We can work on adding more details or smooth out things like that. Okay? So that's it for the sculpting introduction. And of course, as I did at the beginning of this project, I have prepared for you a little file that presents itself like that, where you have on top some planes that are sculpted, and below them flat planes that are enough details. You don't need to add details to it, you just need to sculpt them, and I will ask you to reproduce what you see at the top. Okay? What is at the top is in a collection that you cannot select, and then you've got the flat planes here in another collection. You can see here I'm using something called matte caps. If I were to use the normal mode for the flat viewport shading, sometimes you can't see clearly what is going on, so we use, when we sculpt, what is called a matte cap, which have a predefined set of lighting, which allows you to better see the shape of your model. So I'm using this one, but you can change it if you want to. And then select one of the planes, and then switch to sculpt mode, and start sculpting away. Something great. If you want to move to the next plane, here you can see there is a kind of sculpting icon. You can sculpt on the left plane, and if I click on the dot corresponding to the next plane, I can stay in sculpt mode, not having to go outside to select another object, and then sculpt them all, one after the other like that. Okay? Which can be handy if you want to go a bit fast through all of them. So, first one are using one simple brush. The second row is using one brush, more advanced maybe, or most of the time at least two brushes, okay, to create those shapes. And the third row is using other tools like mask, like filters, and lastly, I've created something just a bit different to challenge you if you want to. So, I hope you like it and you got some things out of this lesson. This is just the beginning. After that, we are gonna continue and create an entire character with sculpts. Okay, so I leave it to your exercises. I hope you will have fun doing them. I wish you a great week, a great life as usual, and I see you next time. Bye.